Nobody move! Now that I've got your attention, let's talk about speed. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, there's a plethora of ways to increase the number of 5-foot squares you can move in one turn. Race features, class features, magic items, spells. You can run over 500 miles per hour with the right build. But there's not so many ways to reduce one's speed. I mean, you got a Ray of Frost that slows you down by 10 feet? And there's also grappling that reduces both you and your opponent to 0. Both of these have limited utility though, and there's definitely better ways to do this with just a little more creativity. See, the reason why limiting your opponent's speed is so rare is because of how powerful it can be. If you can keep that huge scary ogre from getting near you, suddenly he just becomes a big angry pincushion for your party's ranged fighters. Melee monsters that can't even get into melee range are about as effective as a sobriety seminar in a frat house. So today we're going to learn 2 powerful ways to keep your foes in their place and ensure that you stay out of melee range as much as possible. It's quirky, it's creative, and it's definitely unbalanced. First is a build you might have heard of before if you're as obsessed with character optimization as I am. The goal is to maximize your reach and capitalize on the benefits that reach gives you. First, you gotta build a bugbear fighter. Who thought it was a good idea to give the giant hairy monster military grade training? I don't know, but they're probably a blast at parties. Bugbears have naturally long arms. This gives them plus 5 feet of reach, and makes them the only species able to scratch that hard to reach spot and small your back. God damn it! Next, give your Build-A-Bugbear a glaive. Objectively the best weapon in any media it's featured in, and I will fight you on this, Joe Cat! Respond to my emails, Joe Cat! At level 3, you get to pick a subclass, and you're gonna go for Battlemaster, just to drive home that military grade training. The Battlemaster can choose 2 maneuvers at level 3. I recommend Trip Attack and Lunging Attack. Trip Attack knocks your enemies prone, effectively cutting their movement speed in half, since it takes 15 feet of movement for them to stand up again. Lunging Attack lets you thrust an extra 5 feet on the attack, giving you an effective reach of 20 feet on the offensive. At 4th level, you're going to take the Polearm Master feat. This will make you better at whipping that glaive around than Silento cosplaying Indiana Jones. Specifically, it'll let you use a bonus action to attack with the back end of the weapon, and it'll mean that anyone who gets inside your danger zone will get an opportunity attack to the face. 6th level is where this build really comes online. This is where you take your second feat, Sentinel. Sentinel says that anytime you hit an opponent with an opportunity attack, their speed becomes 0. They can't even disengage to get away from death by opportunity attack. From here, combat's a breeze. Let your enemies run up to you and slash them in the face once they get within 15 feet. 15 feet covers a lot of turf. It's highly unlikely that they'll be able to outmaneuver you in getting close to your squishier companions. When you hit them, they can't move for the rest of the turn, meaning they'll have to either resort to a ranged attack or just give up the turn completely. Then when your turn rolls around, hit them back and back up 5 feet so they have to run back into your swirling vortex of glaive-based doom. Imagine a bugbear hiding in a bush, then thrusting his pike 20 feet away with his surprise attack feature, impaling the poor fool who said that there's no one here in this jungle. Then watch as the rest panic as they try to figure out where you are, and you simply pick them off one by one, reveling in your unbeatable tactical prowess. It's completely full. I said it's completely full. It's Alright, I get it. Jeez. So, this build has some weaknesses, like ranged combatants, and spellcasters, and ghosts, and high ACs, and superior numbers. But it absolutely crushes melee foes in one-on-one combat. So, I hope you spend most of your time in a gladiatorial arena. Still, there's a lot of weaknesses to address. Most of them can be compensated by the team squishies, but a lot of them leave notable gaps in your defenses. Most obviously, the issue of what happens when you inevitably miss. Which is why I've prepared another build for you today that should address some of those weaknesses. We're not building a bugbear fighter anymore, now we're building a ranger. Race doesn't really matter, you can still be a bugbear if you want, I guess, I don't judge. Now then, when you build your character, you can either start with an array of starting equipment, or some cash to buy your own loadout. We're going with option 2 today. Rangers get 5d4 times 10 gold pieces to start out with, so let's assume you roll the average and get about 125. Granted, this isn't actually possible, but it's the mean of everything you could get. Roll with it. For background, we're picking the Archaeologist. It gives us a relevant skill and one of the highest starting GPs possible from a background, which is good because we're gonna need as much dosh as we can get. Plus, I like the flavor. Now we've got about 150 gold pieces to work with, so let's just buy up the essentials. We'll get some studded leather armor for defense, an explorer's pack, a longbow, 20 arrows, and approximately 84 nets. Alright, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You buy whatever loadout you want. You will need a lot of nets though, that much I promise you. See, the way this build works is to get you a ton of uses of the spell Ensnaring Strike. This spell requires you make a ranged attack against an opponent. On a hit, the target must succeed on a strength saving throw or they're restrained. This reduces their speed to 0, but it also gives you and your allies advantage to attacks against the target, which means that if you hit them once, you'll be able to hit them so much more. But you're not just casting Ensnaring Strike on your foes, oh no. You're throwing a net with the Ensnaring Strike spell attached to it. That's double the restraint. And it just so happens that the restraint condition stacks. Well, okay, technically there's no rule that it says it doesn't stack, but it makes logical sense, right? I mean, you'd have a harder time dealing with a net if your lower body was covered in vines. But Psycho, you say? What's the point of restraining an enemy twice? And folks, I hear you. I hear all of your words. They come to me unbidden whether I desire them or not. I haven't had a good night's sleep since this terrible curse afflicted my mind. I crave rest above all things, but my work is never complete, and every day more voices join the cacophony of... The point, dear viewers, is that it takes a full action to get out of either form of restraint. One action to escape a net, another to escape the vines. That's 2 turns at least where your target is immobile and has disadvantage to attack others. And when they do break out, just use one of your attacks to throw another net on them. You don't need both of your attacks for damage anyway. You've got advantage as long as the target is restrained. Now don't get me wrong, this build has its issues too. For one, it doesn't work on any creatures bigger than large. You can throw nets on most of the monster manual, but Galaxar the Unfathomable isn't going to care that you threw a scrap of cloth over his pinky toe. For 2, you still can't get ghosts with it, for obvious reasons. But it can handle groups way better, and it gives you more bang for your buck. The polearm build from earlier doesn't give your entire party advantage. Plus, with the right timing, you can keep 2 monsters occupied at once. Maybe even 3 once you get the extra attack at 5th level. The one thing that really holds this class back, however, is the net. The net's typical range is 5 feet. You can throw it up to 15 feet, but you'll have disadvantage to the attack. Thankfully, there's a way around this little sticking point, and it's the same reason we bought a longbow earlier. Sharpshooter is a feat that lets us ignore disadvantage from distance when making ranged attacks. Suddenly, each of those nets has an effective range of 15 feet. Wait, 15 feet you say? Where have I heard that before? Now, you can get this feat at 4th level, but honestly, it's so much more effective if we're using it right from the start. So, sorry to all those people I told to make bugbears, but Variant Human really is better for this particular build. Trust me, I get it. I love me a big, beefy bugbear boy who can hold me in the strong, hairy arms and cradle me to sleep with a tender, loving caress. What was I talking about? Oh, right, but the excessive body hair keeps getting caught in my robot armor, so actually attempting it is really just an unpleasant situation all around. Make a human instead. And just imagine what you'll be like by level 5. Some snotty mage is setting up a power base when you sneak up behind him, throw a net on top of him, and root him to the floor. Then you just keep pecking away at his health points between replacement nets until he's lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood. That'll teach you for kicking me out of magic school, Professor Kronos! What? Unlikely. It could happen. Let me dream my improbable dream, you ghoul. At later levels, the Net Ranger loses a lot of their efficacy. You start fighting bigger monsters in greater numbers, and paralyzing just one becomes a bigger ask when strength saves start to get unreasonably high. But it's always nice to have it in the back pocket in case you had to fight a Lich, or a Mind Flayer, or some other spellcasting squishy. And in the meantime, you're a ranger with a sharpshooter feat. You can hold your own just fine with the bow and arrow, it's not like you're a one-trick pony. The same cannot be said for the polearm bugbear. That big, beautiful boy just can't do enough when he's out of his element, and no amount of love will ever make him much more than a gimmick. Both of these builds are good in their own way, but you could hardly call either one of them unbalanced.